Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today to learn more about Word Warm-Ups Live. Um, Let me just scroll ahead and we'll take a look at our agenda. We'll start by talking about why Word Warm-Ups Live works. We'll talk about making assessment and placement decisions for your students. We'll take a look at the student side and the staff side of the Read Live platform in Word Warm-Ups Live, and I'll show you some of the features. And then we'll talk about how you can use Word Warm-Ups Live to meet your students' various needs. You may already be familiar with the Read Live platform, and if so, you know that for every license you purchase for a student, they have access to all 4 programs in the Read Live platform. And just briefly, when you're looking for a phonics intervention, Word Warm-Ups Live is great because it focuses on phonics. It also provides additional support for fluency, spelling, and phonemic awareness. Another option for phonics support is Read Naturally Live, the phonics series. And this is for students who are working below a 3rd grade level in fluency who also need support in phonics. This table shows the differences and the features of all 4 programs in the Read Live platform. Just briefly, Read Naturally Live is our flagship fluency intervention. It also supports vocabulary, comprehension, and phonics. Word Warm-Ups Live, as I already mentioned, is a separate phonics intervention, and it can also be paired with Read Naturally Live for fluency support. 1 Minute Reader Live is our structured independent reading program. This offers independent reading practice for any student in your classroom. And Read Naturally Live Espanol is presented entirely in Spanish, so it could be used for building Spanish reading fluency for native Spanish speakers or to support Spanish reading development for any student learning Spanish. In this activity today, we'll be focusing on Word Warm-Ups Live. So let's get started. Let's talk about why Word Warm-Ups Live works. When we look at our struggling readers, we know that they struggle for a variety of reasons. Some of our students have weak phonemic awareness or phonics skills. Some of our students have to slow down when they're reading to decode unfamiliar words, and they hesitate because they haven't developed automaticity in decoding. And we know that students who can't decode words accurately and automatically are not fluent readers. So Read Naturally developed 3 levels of Word Warm-Ups Live so that we can reinforce our students' phonemic awareness and phonics skills. We can develop mastery and automaticity in decoding, and we can support our students' fluency development. Why are decoding skills so important? Well, remember, decodable words can be sounded out because they have regular spelling patterns. But what percentage of words in English are actually decodable? It might be more than you think. About 50% of words in English have regular spelling patterns. And that means that each sound in the word matches the letter or letters that represent that sound, like these examples here: black, hot, and plain. Another 37% of English words have just one exception, like the word temperature. And usually that exception occurs when you're decoding a vowel sound. For example, in the word temperature, a student would need to learn that the vowel A in the 3rd syllable says the schwa sound, So research clearly shows the value of phonics instruction. And that makes sense when about 87% of English words are either completely decodable or have just one exception. So that means that the remaining 13% of words in English need to be memorized as irregular words, like the word ocean. Most phonics programs teach students to decode accurately, but learning phonics doesn't guarantee that they're able to decode automatically. Why is it important to be automatic in decoding? Well, from the research, we know that in order to become fluent readers, students need to learn to decode accurately and automatically. Because a student who's using all of their mental energy to sound out a word isn't focusing on the meaning of what they're reading, and often that will result in poor comprehension. Actually, research shows that students who haven't developed automaticity by the beginning of second grade are at risk for reading failure. And we have a lot of these students in our classrooms today. Word Warm-Ups Live uses the Read Naturally strategy of teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring to teach and reinforce phonics skills so that students can become more proficient at decoding unfamiliar words. The lessons in Word Warm-Ups Live provide systematic instruction in the most common phonics patterns in a series of short, carefully sequenced steps. And there are some screenshots here to show what the program looks like on the student side. And we'll be looking at a demo in a little bit. So we have word list exercises that give students plenty of practice in decoding. We also have spelling activities that deepen a student's mastery of reading and spelling. So they're decoding and they are encoding. We also have story exercises that give students practice in decoding words with the featured phonics pattern in connected text. Just briefly, I'm going to review the 3 levels and what each level focuses on. And you have a scope and sequence in your handout starting on page 6. So level 1 of Word Warm-Ups Live focuses on 1-syllable words, starting with letter names and their sounds, building to short vowels, long vowels, and consonant digraphs and blends. So this is going to be typically your first and early second grade level phonics skills. Then we have level 2 that focuses on 2-syllable words. So these are compound words, words that have prefixes and suffixes, open and closed syllables, and also base words that are changed in meaning by those prefixes and suffixes. And then we have level 3, which is multisyllabic words. This is where our older students are really going to need this additional support in decoding because we're looking at longer words that have more syllables that are even harder to decode. Let's take a look next at our assessment and instructional decisions with Word Warm-Ups Live. We know that when a student is struggling, they might need extra support in fluency. Some students are going to need support in fluency and phonics, and some are going to need support just in phonics. So how do we identify what our students' needs are? Well, let's look at an example. Here's Marcy. She's a second grader, and her teacher knows that her fluency benchmark was where it needed to be on the most recent testing. So she just needs that phonics support. So you could use your district phonics assessment to evaluate Marcy and decide what her earliest phonics need is, or you could use the Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment. This assessment, and I'll show you how to access it in a couple of different ways in a little bit, but this assessment helps you identify a student's earliest phonics need and place them in the appropriate section in Word Warm-Ups Live. You could also decide after completing the assessment that this student is appropriate for the Read Naturally Live phonics series. I also want to point out there's a great video on our Read Live help page, and I think Michelle put the link for this in the chat. It's about a 7-minute video that walks you through the steps of assessing a student's phonics needs using the Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment. So I encourage you to take a look at this video when you have a chance. Here's what the scoring worksheet looks like for the Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment. And in the phonics assessment, when you print it, you'll have a script, you'll have placement, directions and suggestions, and you'll also have worksheets for the student to read while they're doing the placement. So with Marcy, we started testing her on level 1, section C, which is long vowels with silent E, because her teacher knew that she was solid on those short vowel CVC words. Looking over here, we can see that Marcy made one error and slowly decoded one other word for a total score of 2. If she had made 3 or more errors, we would stop testing. But since she only made one error and her total score was 2, we're going to continue testing Marcy on the next section, which is level 1, section D, long vowels. Notice here, Marcy made 3 errors on this section. So the directions tell us to stop testing and make a decision. We're either going to place her in Word Warm-Ups Live Level 1, Section D, or we could look at the Read Naturally Live Phonics Series Level 1.3b. Remember, her teacher knows that she's okay with her fluency, so she really wants to focus on those phonics skills with Marcy. She's in 2nd grade, so she's getting to the point where she's really going to struggle with 2nd grade material if she doesn't have those phonics skills. So here's her placement. Her teacher decided to place her in Word Warm-Ups Live, Level 1, Section D, to work on phonics. Here's another example. Here's Evan. He's a 5th grader. He needs fluency and phonics support. He could work in the phonics series of Read Naturally Live if his reading level was below 3rd grade. So his teacher decides to test him in fluency first. So on the Read Naturally Live placement test, Evan was tested at level 3.5. He scored 70 words correct per minute, which is within the placement range for that level. So there are 2 options recommended for placement. His teacher could place him in the sequenced series or the idiom series. Remember, the phonics series is only appropriate for students who read at or below 3rd grade. So Evan is working at a 3rd grade 3.5 level, so we wouldn't recommend the phonics series for him. So his teacher decides to place him at level 3.5 in the sequenced series to work on his fluency and his comprehension. Just a brief review of the series and level options. The phonics series provides phonics instruction and builds fluency for students who are working below a 3rd grade level. And each level of the phonics series focuses on a different phonics pattern. So if Evan needs R-controlled vowels, he would need to be placed at level 2.5 in order to work on that in the phonics series. So if a student's earliest phonics need matches their Read Naturally reading level, it works out for them to work in the phonics series. But since Evan is at level 3.5, there are no phonics levels that are appropriate for him. And typically 2nd and early 3rd graders are going to work in that phonics series. So we're going to place Evan at level 3.5 in the sequenced series. Now let's look at Evan's phonics needs. His teacher knows that he struggles with R-controlled vowels. So she's going to use the Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment and start with level G, level 1, section G, vowels and the consonant R. And here's Evan's results. He made 3 errors in this section. So because he made 3 errors, his teacher is going to place him in level 1, section G. And for fluency, he'll work in Read Naturally Live, the sequence series, level 3.5. And we'll talk in a little bit about the best way to manage that reading block time, especially with older students. Remember, Evan's in the 5th grade. Here's a great takeaway for you to use when you are getting ready to assess your students. I really like these handy checklists, especially when I'm learning something new or using a new assessment. You might want to print this out and put it on a clipboard the first few times you go through the assessment. It's a very simplified checklist for what you go through, and for more detailed instructions, you'll use the Word Warm-Ups Live phonics assessment. All right, so now we're going to talk about how this program works. Just as a reminder, here's the scope and sequence for levels 1 and 2. Remember, level 1 has 9 sections with a total of 69 exercises, starting with letter sounds, working with vowel sounds, consonant blends and digraphs, and so on. Level 2, remember, is 2-syllable words with 8 sections, 68 exercises. We're looking at words that are compound words using prefixes and suffixes and open and closed syllables. And then for level 3, we have 7 sections with 48 exercises. These are the multisyllabic words for our older students. So each level of Word Warm-Ups Live is broken up into sections to address specific skills. And there are 5 types of student exercises in each section. Every section will have an introduction exercise that introduces students to that phonics pattern. It'll have a word list lesson for students to practice reading words with the featured phonics pattern. It'll have a review exercise so that students can review everything they've learned in that particular section. It'll also have a story exercise that looks at connected text with words with the featured phonics patterns. And it will have a challenge exercise that has words with similar phonics patterns, but just a little more challenging words. Here's what a word list exercise is going to look like. Notice we've got this toolbar up at the top that tells what step a student is on. So the look, listen, and respond is a way of a student hearing auditorily what those sounds sound like. We've got the word list exercise next. We'll have a spelling exercise using words with that phonics pattern, and then the pass step where the teacher listens to the student read. And here's what our story exercise toolbar is going to look like. They'll start by reading along with an audio recording of the story. They'll practice the story independently. There'll be a short quiz close activity for the story, and then the pass step where the teacher listens to the student read the story again. And here's a handy steps poster for you. If you want to print this out so that your students know what they're looking at, that's a great idea. And this is also in your handout, or you could print it from our website. Here's another great little checklist for you if you like checklists like I do. You can print this out and have it nearby. And these are all the steps that you'll need in order to give your students access to Word Warm-Ups Live. And I'm going to walk you through the steps of that process right now. So let's get into the module. I'm going to log in as a staff member first and show you the different elements of the staff module. So let's start by looking at the orientation and resources page. And I'm particularly going to point out the Read Live Help page. This is a great resource for you. If you scroll down a little bit, we've got the section all about Word Warm-Ups Live on the side panel here. The online course is a great free way to learn more about Word Warm-Ups Live. It is self-paced and it saves your information every time you use it. That's what the login kind of looks like for you. We've also got a recording of this particular webinar that you can look back at if you need to review it. I also want to point out the student training videos for Word Warm-Ups Live. This is a great way if you've got a group of students working in Word Warm-Ups Live to show them what a student does. And then after each video, you can see there are 5 videos here. After they watch each video, they can then work through the steps on their own. And the last thing I want to point out on the Read Live Help page is we've got a fidelity checklist, another checklist for you, a way for you to make sure that you're using the program with fidelity, that your students are doing what they need to do as they go through the program. And last but not least, here is a link to the phonics assessment as well. So you can access the phonics assessment from the Read Live Help page, And I'm also going to show you how you can access it from the Read Live platform. And there's also the steps poster that you can print out from this Read Live help page. So there's a lot of material, a lot of information here that you can access this right through the staff module of the Read Live platform. All right, we're going to go back now to the Word Warm-Ups Live page. If we scroll down, we can go to the Word Warm-Ups Live page. This is also where you can print the phonics assessment. Notice these tabs across the top. You can print exercises from the Word Warm-Ups Live platform, and you can also take a look at the scope and sequence if you need to do that again. I also want to point out all of these students, some of these students already have access to Word Warm-Ups Live, but not all of them do. So let's say I want to add access for Lee. All I need to do is click on the box in front of his name and add Word Warm-Ups Live access. And it's going to give me a little pop-up. Are you sure you want to do this? And it's also going to remind me that a Word Warm-Ups Live student is assigned automatically to Level 1, Section B, with a word list goal of 40 words correct per minute. I'm going to say yes here, and he's automatically going to be assigned. If I need to edit that assignment, which I might have to do if I've already given him the phonics assessment, I can come over here and change the level that he's in. I can also change the section that he's in. We do recommend that you leave the word list goal at 40 words correct per minute. That's a really good starting place, and you might even want to lower that if you have older students working in level 3. I also want to point out that you can eliminate some of these exercises. For example, if you found out during the assessment that Lee's okay with short O words, then you can click the toggle switch and that will turn off those exercises. So that will save you time in working through the program for him. Always remember to save and close before you leave. And that is all of the features here on the staff module. Now let's log in as a student. So I'm going to log out as a staff member. I'm going to come over here and log in as a student and show you some of the features that a student would see when they use the program. So notice this student, student 1, has been assigned to Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, and 1 Minute Reader Live. So we're going to get them started in Word Warm-Ups Live.
It's time to review.
Hopefully
click the word under the picture for a lesson.
Hopefully you can hear the sound on the student page.
You've learned a lot. Put your learning to work as you read the words in this exercise. Look at the words. The words follow a pattern. Each word begins or ends with a consonant digraph. Together, the two consonants say one sound.
Click each button. Quietly sound out and then read the word with the audio.
So remember, this is a review exercise. So the student is going to work through each word across here and listen to the word being pronounced.
Sh, I, p, ship. Ch, e, k, check. Th, thumb. I, p, whip. R, I, ng, ring.
So
click a word again or click next to continue.
So they've got that audio support for sounding out the words, which is so important and helpful, especially when students are learning a new phonics pattern.
Click any words you don't know and read them with the audio. When you're ready, click Start Timing, read down the columns, and click Finished. Then read across the rows and click Finished again.
So first, the student's going to read down each row. Notice that in this particular column, they're reading down the columns. Each word in this column has the SH sound, and it's consistent throughout, that the words in each column have similar digraphs, and they can click on a word they don't know
shack,
and hear it pronounced, and they can do that throughout.
chin,
When they're finished reading down the columns, then they're going to read across the rows to themselves, and they're going to click on the finished button when they're finished. Now you can adjust the number of times that they practice reading this word list, especially for students that are English learners or struggling with a certain type of phonics pattern. It's a good idea to add on some additional read-alongs.
You've reached your goal. You've finished all your practices. Click Start Timing to practice again, or click Next to continue.
So remember, this practice step is the repeated reading component of the Read Naturally strategy. And it also allows students to monitor their progress by showing their scores in the box right here. And remember too that we're scoring their word lists in words correct per minute, not in time. And that's a little bit different than Read Naturally Live.
Click the speaker icon to hear a spelling word. Then, type the word and click Show Me to see the correct spelling.
shack. The roof was missing from the old shack. Shack.
So the student's going to type in the spelling of the word using those encoding skills and also still focusing on those phonics patterns.
Compare your word to the correct answer. Fix your word if it doesn't match. Then, click Check.
So the program keeps track of
Click Next to continue.
So the program keeps track of whether the student gets a word correct on the first try. So that's what you're going to see on their reports later on. And it also, when they first try to spell the word, that's what it notates and keeps track of. It's also going to keep track of their incorrect attempts.
Latch. He forgot to latch the gate, so the dog got out. Latch.
Okay, so it's going to keep track that they missed that word, but they have the opportunity immediately. They get immediate feedback so that they can correct it and move on.
Click Next to continue.
Thin. The ice is too thin for skating. Thin.
Okay, they can compare it, immediate feedback, and then they can go on to the next
Click
word.
Next to continue.
Wham. When the boulder fell, we heard a loud wham. Wham.
Click
Tang. I can taste a tang of lemon in that cake. Tang.
Click Next to continue. Play this game while you wait for your teacher. Click the best answer to score points. If there's a speaker icon, click it. Click any word or picture you don't know to hear what it is.
So while the student's waiting for the teacher to come and do the pass step with them, remember when the screen is red at the top and the bottom, that tells you that a teacher is needed to continue. So this is our Phontastic game. They can hear words that have different phonics patterns and practice listening. All of the words in Phontastic are clickable. So that's another great way for them to just get better at hearing those different sounds. Then the teacher comes, they click on the yellow box there. And now the teacher is going to listen to the student read the word list as part of that pass step. So the student, again, is going to read down the columns first for the teacher. The teacher is going to keep track of the words that a student misses on this step, either by making notes on a Post-it or just keeping track, counting with their fingers. And the benchmark is they need to meet their words correct per minute goal with 3 or fewer errors. So they finished reading down, now they're going to read across. And the teacher's just keeping track, they're just listening, looking for patterns in what the student may or may not be able to read automatically and accurately.
Wait for your teacher to enter the number missed. Then, click Next to continue.
Okay, so this student made 2 errors this time. And obviously they're way above their goal. But the kids like seeing the graph kind of grow in red, and it also tells them how many stars they earned and what their words correct per minute was here. So that's that immediate feedback, that progress monitoring step of the Read Naturally strategy. Now we have an opportunity to review a student's work, and this shows us everything that they did on this particular exercise, including what words they misspelled and how they misspelled them. So looking at those patterns is a really good way to identify areas of need for your students. We've also got, we can look at how they've performed recently on the different word lists in the exercises and how they've performed on the spelling step. And we can print these reports. It's really helpful. I'll show you some more information about these reports in just a minute. Now, this is where the teacher decides what remedial actions the student needs to complete. So maybe you want the student to go back and redo the spelling step, or maybe you just do something with pencil and paper with them. It really depends on what your student needs. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this student with their current scores. They get a little...
Congratulations. You passed this exercise. Click Done to finish.
Okay, so they've got this reward as well.
Please select the next exercise.
And now we're going to look at the story exercise.
Look at the story, Fish That Shock. Notice the consonant digraphs in many of the words in this story.
Click Start Read Along and read along as the story is read to you.
What can happen when you touch a broken?
Okay, so the story is read for the student. You can, again, adjust the number of read-alongs that a student needs to do. If you have a student that needs a little more practice, you can do that as well. And this is the teacher modeling step of the Read Naturally strategy. So we're modeling correct pronunciation, and we're helping the student learn new words and master other words. And based on some teacher feedback, we are going to be coming out with some easier stories for these sections, stories that have fewer big words and that are easier for the student to read. Remember, on the read-along step, the teacher is reading at a pretty slow pace, so we can unmute.
Small fish that they want to eat, too. Electric eels do not have teeth. They can't hold a wiggling fish, and they can't chew. When an electric eel...
So the reading rate is pretty slow on this one, and that's where we need it to be. The student is learning these words. They're becoming more familiar with the phonics patterns. So they don't need to have a very fast, expressive read along because we're not really measuring fluency here. We are looking at their ability to sound out words with those featured phonics patterns. So let's let her finish up, and then we'll look at the next step.
They're shocks. They can light up light bulbs. They can even give off shocks 8 hours after they die.
All right.
Click Start Read Along to read along, or click Next to continue.
And again, you can adjust the number of times a student needs to read along, especially if they're struggling with this particular phonics pattern.
Click Start Reading and begin reading.
So again, the practice step, they're only going to practice the story one time. The practice isn't timed, and there's no fluency score that comes out of this. So the purpose of them reading this story independently, and notice they do have a reading guide that you can toggle on and off here, or they can toggle on and off, depending on whether they need that extra scaffolding and support. But the purpose here is to read a story with the featured phonics pattern in connected text. So we're also looking for some comprehension as they go along. And obviously they can click to go advance to the next page for these as well. And when they're finished, they click Finished Reading.
Click Start Reading to practice, or click Next to continue.
And now they're ready to go on to the next step, which
Click
is
each blank and pick the best answer. Then, click Next.
the quick quiz. So this is a cloze activity. They can decide what words go best in the blanks. And again, with the easier story version that's going to be coming out soon, the sentences here are also going to be easier for students. So since this is a level 1 story for first or second graders, we've adjusted the difficulty of these stories and sentences to better meet the needs of our students. So let's just go through and answer these, complete these sentences. Okay.
Play this game while you wait for your teacher. Click the best answer to score points. If there's a speaker icon, click it. Click any word or picture you don't know to hear what it is.
So once again, we've got a different set of words. This time we're looking at meanings of words. And again, they can click on any of these words to hear them read. The teacher is going to conduct the pass activity for this with the student. Remember, this is not timed. They just want to hear if the student is confident in reading and decoding the words with that featured phonics pattern. And the evaluation is just exceeded, met, or did not meet expectations. It's also going to give you an opportunity to review how they did with that cloze activity. You can either see your students' most recent responses or the correct responses. And anytime I see a little question mark like this, I like to click on it because it explains what the different responses are going to look like. And again, we're back here.
Congratulations. You passed this exercise. Click Done to finish.
And now our
Please
student
select the next exercise.
is ready for the challenge exercise. So that is just a brief review of what the platform looks like for the student. Now let's talk about how Word Warm-Ups Live can help you meet your students' various needs. We can meet the needs of students in Tier 1, 2, or 3. In Tier 1, you might want to have your students work in Word Warm-Ups Live for about 10 minutes a day, just to review those phonics skills that they're learning during core instruction. And it will help them build automaticity in decoding and spelling words with the featured phonics patterns. If you have a Tier 2 or 3 intervention group, it's a good idea to have students work in Word Warm-Ups Live for 20 to 30 minutes a day, where they can listen and respond to different phonics lessons, featuring those phonics skills that they still need to master. And then for your special education students, you can assign those students to specific lessons that are targeted to meet their short-term or long-term IEP goals. So if you have an older student, they might only need to work on a few different vowel or consonant patterns. So you can assign those specific exercises in the teacher module and move the student more quickly through just those phonics skills that have been identified as weaknesses for that student. All right, here's the part about working in both programs that can be a little bit challenging, but here are some different options. You could have your students work in Word Warm-Ups Live just for the first 10 minutes of your session, and then switch to Read Naturally Live for the remainder if they need support in fluency and phonics. Or if they need more extensive support, they could work in an entire exercise in Word Warm-Ups Live and then complete all the steps for a story and Read Naturally Live. And the great thing is, wherever they leave off in either program, it'll put them right back where they started or where they ended when they go back. Just briefly looking at different reports, if you're in the staff module, you print reports by clicking on this tile that's down here at the bottom of the page. And Word Warm-Ups Live reports, student level reports. Here's some examples. You can see exactly which exercises they passed, which vowel sounds they still need more help with, how many practices they used. Oops, let me go back there. How many practices, what their goal was, and also their spelling percentage. So this is great information when you're meeting with parents or other teachers, when you're deciding whether a student needs more intervention, or when you're in an IEP meeting. And then I showed you this a little while ago. The word list graph tells you exactly what word list they've tried to pass and how many errors they made on each one. And also the spelling graph shows you exactly what words they might have missed on their last spelling exercise. And then you can also print out their exercise details for each exercise. This might be helpful if you've got a parent who wants to work with a student at home. They could maybe make flashcards to help practice with spelling or decoding. We've looked at the teacher menu, but just briefly let me review. You can print the exercises. You can also change the exercise options by toggling the switch on and off, or by adjusting the number of practices or read-alongs that they might have to do. And don't forget about our Read Life help page. This is a great resource for you. It's got information about all 4 Read Life programs. Today, we've been talking about Word Warm-Ups Live, and remember I showed you the student training videos, the fidelity checklist, and the steps poster. And just let me know, Michelle, let me know if there are any questions that I need to answer in the chat. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Diana, thank you. I don't have any questions in the chat right now. If anybody does have anybody, please go ahead and ask, and we will get you a response today or early tomorrow. Just a reminder that we will be sending follow-up emails with the link to the webinar recording and the handout in about 24 hours. Please feel free to share with your colleagues, and please respond to the survey questions that appear on your screen after the webinar so we can continue to improve that experience for all of you. With that, I thank everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day.